special remote meeting being broadcast live on local channel 18. There is a call-in conference number of 508-539-1400, extension 8585. I do not anticipate any public comment tonight. However, it is available and is being streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website at https://www.mashpema.gov/channel-18. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's different. All the echoes.
Sorry, Jack, I didn't have the flag prepared.
That's all right. All right, the first item on the agenda is the appointment required. We have an applicant, Edward T. Hanley, regarding 12 Bluff Ave, map 112, lot 92, and 13 Cordwood Road, map 112, lot 86. Is a request to divide a 20 by 70 foot parcel, which is off of 13 Cordwood Road, lot 1847, to be combined with 12 Bluff Ave. Has everyone had a chance to look at the A&R?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions about it? No. I'd like to take a motion to approve the A&R. I make a motion.
Does Charlie have any comments?
No, I took a look at it, Mary.
Yeah, okay.
There were some graphic errors that needed to be corrected. I know that Evan did that with the applicant's engineer, and I took a look at it quickly, and I couldn't see any issues with it.
Okay.
I did think it's a little bit of an interesting divide, but that's neither here nor there. It's kind of weird to take from one lot, especially down there, and put it on your lot. So, other than that, I didn't have any questions either. So I will entertain a motion to accept the A&R. Anyone?
So moved.
All right, second?
I second the motion.
All right, I'll go around the room for yay or nays. Mary Wagner?
A.
Dennis? Yeah. Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I'm a yes, too. I see you there, Rob, but we're all set. Thanks. All right. You all set with that, Evan?
Yeah. I'll just need one signature from the chair tomorrow, if that's okay.
I'm scheduled to be at Town Hall tomorrow morning anyway, so.
And just one reminder, I think Jen probably has gotten good at this, and since we're back on Zoom, I'm not certain we'll need, I'm not certain there'll be more votes, but if you're making a motion and seconding a motion, we just let Jen know who it was. Now,
Didn't so long, I forget.
this gentleman is trying to get back into the Zoom, and I think I'm just not going to admit him in the room, considering we just took action on his item, and I'll follow up with him tomorrow. How do you feel about that, Jack? Unless you wanted me to try one more time to let him in and let him know.
You can try just briefly. If it's not going to hold us up too much, we'll give him a second. That way he can know he's not waiting.
Jack, do you want to do the minutes?
Did you?
Why don't we do that? Go ahead and review the minutes of October 7th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review them? No.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't have too many. I didn't have any questions on it. I thought it was fine. Anyone?
Nope. No questions from me.
I'll take a motion to accept the minutes from October 7th, 2020.
So Mary.
All right. I think I heard Mary. Mary made the motion. I have a second.
Second.
A second by Dennis. All those in favor? Aye.
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 All right, we have it. Okay. We're ready to, what do you think, Evan?
I'm sending him a message, Jack. I think he responded, so I told him it was endorsed. I'm going to go ahead and just proceed with the agenda, Mr. Chair, and I will contact them tomorrow, but he knows that action was taken.
Yeah, I just see that he posted, thank you, that he's struggling with trying to get on, so. All right, we'll move on to new business, and the first item is the discussion and approval of the request for proposals for the consulting engineer. Obviously, I was involved with that with John. Has everyone had the opportunity to go over it and review what we laid out?
I did, yes.
Anyone have any questions? No,
everything's fine to me.
Yeah.
If, Jack, I just wanted to, I did submit this to Charlie for his review. He made some suggestions to me in writing. I didn't provide them to the board because I thought he could have the opportunity to share them with you now. I wouldn't say there are anything of major substance. Nothing I certainly had issues with, but if you'd like Charlie to have the opportunity to let you know what he wrote to me, he did submit something to me.
Absolutely, Charlie. Charlie, if you do reference a certain area, just let me know so I can keep along with the one that we have here.
Yeah, the first suggestion I made was at the bottom of the first paragraph where it says invitation to bid.
Okay.
And at the end of it where it says recommendations to the planning board with regard to same at all regularly scheduled public meetings, right after that I added, and to make field inspections upon request of those projects that have been approved by the planning board.
That seems reasonable. What else, Charlie?
Next paragraph, right after the word Massachusetts general laws, it's about a little over halfway down. I just made some minor changes to say right after that the submittals are prepared in accordance with good engineering, design, construction practices, and to recommend any additional studies that would be prudent to assist the planning board in making an informed decision with regard to the application.
That sounds good.
Next one is at the last paragraph on that page, about the middle of it. I just crossed out the word site plan after the words town planner, a quote for site plan review. I just crossed out the word site and said for plan review. Because sometimes you look at a site plan, other times you look at a subdivision plan, which is not a site plan.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing on the next page. Nothing on the page after that.
That was qualifications.
Yeah. And if you go to the last page, where it talks about there's items A through J.
I have A through I.
A through I, sorry. Maybe that should be J then. I put in another one at the bottom of that, which would be J, that says the extent to which the applicant or firm currently represents project proponents to any board or commission of the town of Mashpee. The reason I put that in there was because you want to be sure that there's no conflict of interest for somebody that is presenting to another board where you might have some reason to be in concern with it or involved with it. That's the whole reason why I was involved or invited to come to Mashpee in the first place, was that Phil Holmes, who was the town engineer at that time, felt he was doing too much work in the town of Mashpee and wanted to have someone else do the work that he was doing. So that's why I put that in there. And the last thing I noted was at the bottom of that same page, number 5, I put in the word, Evan, was your intent to say a written sample showing a technical review?
Well, I mean an actual writing sample, like when you provide written reports for the board.
Okay, I just didn't know whether the word writing was appropriate or whether you wanted a written sample. That's all.
I think we're talking about the exact same thing, but I know when I apply to certain jobs, they request a writing sample from me for this.
That's fine. Keep it as it is. And the only other thing I made was on the last page where I changed the word bidder to applicant. This really, you're not looking for bids. You're looking for a proposal from various applicants. So a successful bidder should be really a successful applicant.
Thanks, Charlie.
Because we just gets in all the other paragraphs as well. So.
Yeah, and those were the only things that I had. They were minor things. That's all. I think Evan did a good job of putting this together.
Thanks, Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
One thing for the board that I realized as I sit and read this draft is, Charlie, you recommended to include a new subsection J in that section 4.
Yeah.
Those should be numerals, not letters. Every other subsection starts with a numeral. So I'm going to change those to numerals. That's a formatting issue.
Okay.
If we could have a discussion, Jack, if it's okay with you, relative to Section 5 proposal submissions. the writing sample, I was just trying to capture everything I think Charlie does for the board and everything that I think the board finds valuable. And the written reports you receive are thorough and good. I wanted to, the reason I put 5 is because I wanted to ensure that whomever the board contracts with is able to provide a similar, if not stronger quality of writing. But I want to be sensitive to the fact that I want this RFP to generate responses. So I wanted to have a dialogue with the board about whether or not that was onerous.
I understand the reasoning behind it. So I kind of understand where you're going with it. How does everyone else feel?
I think it's fine, Evan. That sounds like a good idea. I mean,
I do too. Want to see what they can do for us.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be onerous. They should have plenty of samples, plenty of writing samples.
That's how I felt too, John.
Yeah,
Okay.
they could block out the applicant's name for whoever they did it for, or the town, or whatever, and just leave the bulk of the written report, and then you could evaluate it from that.
That's
So
how I
if
felt.
they felt sensitive about it, they could block out various aspects of it.
Great. And one more thing, Jack, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Is the board, so I just want to highlight the dates that I built into this draft. This is essentially seeking to have applicants submit by December 4th. So my hope was to, if the board approves this tonight, to have this posted by the 1st of November, the first week of November, and keep it open for 30 days. Does the board feel comfortable with that timeline?
Yes.
Just keep in mind we have Thanksgiving in the interim, so we could I could futz with those dates a little bit, but I think there's some importance to getting this issued quickly at this
Right.
point, and I guess we could make the submission deadline sometime in the middle of December, but I think 30 days is more than enough. But I wanted to pose that question to the board also.
Well, I think if you post it November 1st, even including the holiday, with the December 4th deadline, that gives them, what's the 32 days? So,
Full month. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
And if this ends up being, if we don't get sufficient responses, there are things we can discuss a couple weeks down into the posting. But I felt comfortable with that timeline, and I wanted to make sure the board was also.
Oh, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Joe.
Just to make sure it is enough time, Charlie, just with your experience and knowing the other, engineers in the area, do you think there'll be a decent amount of applicants, in your opinion, coming out?
I'm not sure that there's going to be a lot of them. This is difficult for those on the Cape, especially, who, of course, do work in Mashpee. I can think of a couple that would, they would be not eligible right off the bat because they do file with Mashpee for multiple things, and there aren't that many other engineering firms on the Cape itself. When you get off the Cape, you get a few more, but how many of them actually work on the Cape, that's hard to tell. So you may get a few. I have no sense for how many you may get. I really don't.
I think, Joe,
It's not going to be easy to fill. Not because I was so fancy or anything, but it's just the nature of the beast.
Sure, Charlie, we know.
No, it just is.
Joe, I think I found with any RFP, whether it's like for a development project or a service, the quality of the RFP and the methods with which you advertise are really important. So we'll just do our best to get this out there and consumed by as many people as possible. I think that's the best way we can solicit any responses.
I know you will.
Aside from those edits, does anyone have any other edits they would like to include in this document?
No.
No.
None. Is everyone comfortable with allowing Evan to go ahead and convert this draft to a posting and move it forward? Do we need to take a motion with that, or are we okay with just having you do it?
I'll make a motion that we approve the RFP as amended during this meeting for release in early November.
We have a motion by...
I'll second that motion.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion, Joe.
Seconded by Joe Callahan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Evan.
Thank you, everyone. I'll
Evan,
Yes,
Evan,
sir.
just as a piece of information to you, the Massachusetts Association of Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors
Yep.
would be a good organization just to include when you advertise it. I think you can find their address online,
Great.
and it might be appropriate just to send it through to them because they might have people that would be interested in it.
I appreciate the recommendation, Charlie. Thank you. I'll make
Okay.
note
Okay.
Yes, Evan, can you send us each a copy too?
of the final draft. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll
Oh,
let
do
you,
we, or if people are interested in it, do they have to contact you for the, RFP?
if people are interested in obtaining the RFP, they should
They
probably.
contact,
They should technically, I think, contact the town manager's office as the chief procurement officer.
okay.
But it would, I think it should go through his office, and then I'll make it available.
So I guess what I'd like is the announcement, like the legal ad that announces the availability of the RFP.
Sure, I can provide that.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next item. It's a discussion regarding potential inclusion in rezoning bylaw proposals. I did do some research on it. I know that Mary talked at length about this a little bit, or not at length, but at least talked briefly about it at our last meeting, and had sent us all some information regarding this. I'd like to first ask Evan for a little input on this, and then I think maybe we can go to you, Mary. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So, Evan?
I think it's timely to take up inclusionary zoning. I think Mary's proposal is a timely one. I think we've discussed it months ago, but didn't get very far for a number of reasons. But Mary pointed out in her the document she provided, and, Mashpee zoning bylaw isn't completely devoid of inclusionary zoning. We do have some provisions in the bylaw that require affordable units at certain thresholds. It's, as Mary provided, the cluster development bylaw and in the OSID bylaw. I think the one point I want to raise as the board takes up this conversation is that I feel strongly that inclusionary zoning can play a pivotal role in the production of affordable units if we also look more broadly at the zoning bylaw and its ability to actually develop sufficient number of units to actually trigger the thresholds that can create affordability. So I would urge the board to consider absolutely adopting thoughtful inclusionary zoning regulations, but also give serious consideration to those areas in Mashpee that are ripe for redevelopment, and couple those inclusionary zoning requirements with updates to the bylaw that will allow a newer pattern of a development, perhaps like multifamily zoning, overlay districts in appropriate redevelopment areas that'll actually trigger the inclusionary thresholds the board decides on, and actually make some progress in creating units. Like with the OSID, for example, we have the inclusionary language in there, and at the time of the creation of that bylaw, it was intended for Mashpee Commons. And had they pursued the development under that bylaw, it would have been an effective tool at generating actual deed-restricted affordability. But the problem is, Commons never took advantage of that, and so the inclusionary zoning requirement is not producing. So if we're going to move forward with inclusionary zoning, which I believe we should, we want to ensure that the language actually triggers the thresholds and units become created. So that's the point I wanted to stress. So I think it's a great time to do this. I just think the question needs to we need to make sure we think beyond just the confines of the inclusionary zoning language and modify the bylaw to actually generate units.
Evan, would it be your recommendation to make some sort of, to make it, I don't know if the word is contingent upon that, but how do you marry those two to make sure that they both happen?
Well, I mean, it's not that they must happen together, John. It's just that I think the pattern of development we have and what's available in terms of land area today, and given the nature of our land use regulations and the land available and what's already built, no matter what thresholds we put in, there's not going to be any development that occurs that's going to trigger those thresholds. Unless we create opportunities for redevelopment of parcels that are grossly underutilized. And I think those parcels exist, particularly along like 151 and 28. There are some underutilized, or at least parcels that aren't being utilized to their, I think, highest and best use. And so, I think there's only so much more land to be developed. I think the real opportunities for Mashpee, especially as we look at the wastewater conversation and actually taking some action on wastewater, are redevelopment of areas along our primary arterials and primary corridors for mixed use or multifamily residential. And couple those potential amendments with more strict inclusionary zoning requirements.
Okay. Well, Mary, since you've put a lot of stuff down, I'm going to let you have the floor.
Yes, so I gave you 3 examples. 2 are from, as Evan said, the Mashpee zoning. One is from the cluster subdivision, which I think triggers at 10, right, Evan? If there's 10 new units made, one has to be affordable. Then the other section is from the Open Space Incentive Development Bylaw, which talks about affordable bedrooms and not units, which is not, that can be kind of confusing to developers. So I just put it in there to show you that it's in the bylaw, but I don't think we should make affordable bedrooms. I think we should make affordable units, right? And then I put Yarmouth in because that triggers at 5 units. And the reason why they went so low is because they didn't have a lot of developable land. And they have received 1 unit affordable, and they're about to get 2 more. So, no, you don't get a lot of units like this, but it does address what Dennis originally brought up. You know, here was a big development coming through and no affordable housing. And you will eventually get to a point in Mashpee where you're doing redevelopment. So something might be commercial that might go to residential, and then you'll be happy that you have this in. I recommend, you know, once you trigger 10%, 10 units, 1 is affordable, and you give a bonus unit, which is a lot of fun for town planners to figure out how to write the bonus unit in. But, and that compensates the developer for the affordable unit. And there's also language, like you want to make sure the unit gets on that subsidized housing inventory. You know, we're trying to get to 10% affordable housing in town. You want to make sure it's really clear that that's what we want. We don't want it affordable, lowercase, uppercase, workforce housing. No, you want it on the subsidized housing inventory. And I think the language that's in the Mashpee bylaw worked at our last cluster subdivision. That worked, and it, you know, has that reference to Chapter 40B. It's not a Chapter 40B, but that's the law that maintains the subsidized housing inventory. Now, regarding marrying it to some other planning initiative, I just caution you that we've done that before in Yarmouth, and people felt that the zoning initiative was only to create affordable housing. It became a mess, and everything failed at town meeting. When you separate it, like if you had like a small affordable housing bylaw that we have in Yarmouth, which is like really long, I think that it can be much more concise. When you go to town meeting, you're only talking about affordable housing, and you're not marrying it to something, for example, high density. High density is going to be a hard sell here on the Cape. So if you want the affordable housing, separate the 2 initiatives, because it's different type of outreach and it's different type of education. I think there's a lot of support right now for affordable housing, and this piece could sail through.
I know I have some comments, but I saw that Evan had something. Go ahead, Evan.
I just wanted to just regarding the let me back up here. Our cluster requirement, that's a perfect, that language includes the bonus bedroom that you were mentioning, just for the board's knowledge. If you build 10, and you make one, you gotta give an affordable unit, but after that affordable unit is, that unit is transferred to a property owner and the deed is restricted, you get a bonus building lot.
Right,
Okay.
in the
That exists.
Mashpee, okay, good. All right, so the Mashpee cluster subdivision gives you the bonus. Okay, good.
It does.
Yeah, that currently is in there, right?
It is. So that's why I had my hand up, and I guess just to Mary's final point, I think whether or not these issues that I raised are taken up at one town meeting or multiple town meetings, I think that's the board's decision to make. I just think the biggest bang for your buck is when you create a threshold, we'll call it 5 in Yarmouth's standpoint. It's most productive when if you don't want units just to trickle in, which I think is Yarmouth is seeing, it's producing units. That's great. But I think the only thing I wanted to raise is that I notice, and I think there are certain properties that I see every day that are just prime for redevelopment, and I think we just need to give thought about what that redevelopment should look like. And I think there's an opportunity to move the dial forward with regard to the availability of affordable housing with those properties. And I'm not here with a proposal on what that language looks like or what the zoning should be or what the building type should be, but I think there's opportunity there. And I think the inclusionary zoning that Mary mentioned 2 weeks ago made me think about it a little bit. So with regard to strategy for getting inclusionary zoning approved and something else, I don't really have a strong opinion there, but no matter how the board takes it up, I think it's an important thing to do. And I feel strongly that there's more opportunity should the board want to take it.
Mary, just a question for you. I was looking at it and just looking at our OSID and in the Yarmouth information. Is there any lot size requirement, or is it strictly on the number of units?
It's just the number of units. It's so simple. It's just the number of units or number of lots or, however you want to structure it.
I agree with you, and I agree with Evan, and I think that we definitely should move forward with it. As far as suggestions on how to move this forward, Evan?
Well, I could certainly do some further literature review about inclusionary zoning bylaws. The reason I like what Mary provided from Yarmouth is that it's very simple and straightforward language.
Yeah.
We can start there. I see no issue
Simple
starting
the
there.
better. I mean, if we make a big thing out of it, we should just say, you build 5 houses, 1 affordable. You build 2 houses,
Exactly.
10 houses,
Well,
2 affordable.
Jack and I were discussing this in just some preliminary review, and a lot of, I think a lot of municipalities who have tried I'd say more complex certainly, but more strict language in their inclusionary zoning bylaws ended up getting struck down by the AG because they were considered taxes. I think it's just a simple exchange, and I like the Yarmouth's language for that reason. So we can start there, and I can do some further lit review to make some written recommendations to the board.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
Jack,
plan.
Dennis is right, Sean. It's the only question I have about the Yarmouth. Are we considering the 5, or are we going to do 1 out of 10?
That's a good question because 5 is bold.
I
5 is
I
20%.
wonder if we should talk to the housing committee, the Affordable Housing Committee, and ask what what they sense the pulse is for the town.
Yeah,
we have.
My preference would be 10, only because the consumer can do the math in their head and say, okay, we're looking for 10%, 1 out of 10. But if you do 1 out of 5,
also,
that's
Mary,
20%. You're asking them to double up.
John,
But Mary, what you were saying too, people, as you were saying, it gets a little confusing. People get scared off at town meeting. I mean, you don't want to scare them off either. This sounds great, but we don't want to scare people up and shut it down.
Jack, do you mind if I chime in?
Absolutely.
All right, so I don't know if I agree. I think a lower number is better. For the same reason I recommended looking at some broader zoning changes, possibly. And it's that due to the availability of land area, the types of development we're seeing, I don't know if you're going to get a single unit at 10. I mean, with the exception of one, and it would be Mashpee Commons. But within that discussion, that we're pursuing a development agreement where these things can be negotiated separately.
Anyways.
So
we should
your
try and
point
think about
is
this not
the
just through the lens of
develop-
Mashpee Commons. We should look at this beyond the confines of those parcels that Mashpee Commons controls.
So is your point that the developments won't get to 10 total anyway?
I couldn't fathom triggering that threshold based on the availability of land unless we were to incentivize redevelopment of property that included a residential component. That was my point.
Okay, I get it.
If I could chime in, Jack, just for a second here, listening to it. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that if you've got areas in town that are ripe for redevelopment, or you've got a limited amount of land, you certainly would need to look at what the underlying zoning is to see whether or not very many parcels would give you 10 developed lots, and whether you'd get the one affordable out of that. It may be that you'll have to look at your zoning in those places particularly, and if you're looking at getting a larger number of lots in exchange for an affordable one, you might have to reduce the lot size somewhere to make it a little more manageable.
Yeah.
But it almost seems like you need to get an inventory of what available spaces you have and see what the underlying zoning is to see how it matches up with the potential.
That's a good point, Charlie.
That's a good suggestion.
I think also just about thresholds. I mean, what we could also debate are, a scale. Less than 10 is a certain threshold, and 10 and above is another threshold. I mean, these are things we could debate, but I think to the point I raised earlier and what Charlie echoed is that an understanding of what I, in my mind, are considering as ripe for redevelopment, what the underlying zoning is, and what a potential change could be, might have an impact on what the thresholds should be. So I do think there's more planning work here to be done, but I think this is a great place to start.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you too. And I think that instead of saying 5 and 1, maybe to John's point, saying less than 10 you'll have 1, over 10 you'll have 2. So that you'll still meet that 20%, the 5 and 1, but you do it in a way where if someone's building a 9 lot or an 8 lot, they're still got to do 1 instead of avoiding that 10 generated.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
So
we'd end up. Go ahead, Mary.
And then remember, you want to give that bonus unit.
Yeah, we can still do that.
They should be able to make up the money for the affordable unit.
Right. And
they can donate. They can donate the property to Habitat like we do with the cluster subdivision stuff. If they're not experienced in affordable housing, we should have something in the bylaw that they can donate the property or the lot for creation of an affordable unit. There's also a provision in the Yarmouth bylaw that talks about a cash payment in lieu to the Affordable Housing Trust. But it's expensive. Our formula in Yarmouth is I think right now it's $135,000 to buy out, for a cash payment in lieu of the affordable unit. But let's say you've got this really beautiful land that has a nice scenic view. It might be worth it to that developer to just, pay a fee to the Affordable Housing Trust to not have to deal with the affordable housing.
I will say, though, looking at that and researching it, there are a lot of studies done, and it's right next door in Barnstable, they ran into a problem by having these fees, and they actually got in trouble in court, and because their fee was considered a tax, and that happened back in...
it got passed by the Attorney General just because it's an alternate. It's a voluntary thing. So you can require a certain percentage of affordable housing, and then you can let that developer voluntarily cash out of it.
Yeah, you have to put the language correctly, because that's what Barnstable ran into the problem with. They didn't have the language right, and they end up losing in court because it was considered a tax and not a fee, or a voluntary donation, as you put it. So I like the way this discussion went. I think maybe Evan can work on some language for all us to look at. I personally like the idea of, under 10, you got to have 1 anyway, rather than doing the 5 and 1. So at least we know we captured that, and like you said, Mary, the bonus with the 10. So Go ahead, Evan, jump in.
Just one final thing while we wrap this up is also, and maybe this is something the board could solicit some input from the Affordable Housing Committee on, but the incentive and the related thresholds could also be, and maybe should also be related to the type of unit being created. Whereas I think a developer should be given further incentive to build affordable rental housing as opposed to affordable home ownership, because that is what meets the need. Currently on the Cape, I mean, I think there's a way to structure it that way. We could do that way. We could do it, we don't have to do it that way, but it's certainly something to consider, you know. I think the threshold should be different for, you know, a detached single-family subdivision as opposed to a multifamily residential apartment building.
Right, and I think that's where the bedroom language came from, because you don't want to have a single bedroom unit, because now you had an opportunity to make a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom where you could bring in a low income family versus. Right. I think that's why maybe that's where the bedroom stuff.
I don't know. I don't think at this conversation tonight we need to feel like we need to move one way or the other with regard to what these thresholds are. I think there are a number of ways to go about it, and we can. I think leave it at that, and I'm happy to do further lit review. Put some language together, let the board consume it, think about some other related planning activity, and the board can define those thresholds later.
That's a good idea.
Good discussion.
Yeah, Evan, what's our deadline to submit zoning? Is it July?
For October?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's July. It's like,
Okay.
You got time.
The second Monday, I think, in July, something like that. I think it was the 10th this past year.
I know, you watch. It'll still come down to that last meeting in June.
It always does.
Always does.
All right.
All right, good.
We'll move on to the next item, discussion regarding wastewater impact fees. I don't have a lot of information myself on it. I know that doing some research on it, for towns that do have wastewater impact fees, it did require an act of the legislature, which obviously you know that the legislature moves at a snail's pace. I know that the Cape Cod Commission is already authorized through the legislature to collect fees in regards to wastewater. I think I'll let Evan jump in this. Mary, was this proposal by you, or to add it to the agenda by you?
No, they were both Dennis's idea, and I took over the affordable housing one because I have some expertise, but I did not do any research about the wastewater fee.
I'll have Evan jump in here. Evan, go ahead.
You know, I don't know much either, Jack, I gotta be honest, but I just learned a couple things that you already pointed out. A lot of Massachusetts municipalities haven't touched impact fees due to a particular case, I think that was relative to the town of Franklin, where the impact fees were shot down because they were seen as an unlawful tax.
I will say, in my research, I found the town of Hadley was able to enact the legislature, and they did it through flow rates and what's up. But it's a very complicated process that they had to go through to do it, and I'm not sure if we need to do that.
I think I had one takeaway from my limited research. I'll admit it's limited, so we could probably take this further. But there seemed to be, in what I had reviewed, a need to demonstrate a regional impact. Okay, and I think that's why, wastewater certainly is a regional issue. But it's, I think, also why the legislature, specifically in their enabling regulations for the Cape Cod Commission, allowed the commission to accept impact fees as part of the developments that triggered regional or DRI thresholds. So my question, I guess, for the board is, do we think that there would be developments that could, if we were to, say, come up with some framework for accepting impact fees that wouldn't already trigger DRI review from the commission and be subject to those mitigation requirements? I mean, because I'm thinking about, what we see for, the big developments like the Commons and, the Community Health Center that had DRI review and, bridges. These are all projects that did have regional impact, were reviewed and had to pay mitigation monies, impact fees that the town benefits from. So I'm wondering, do we want to get into the nitty-gritty of requiring further fees? And if we do, I think it's a conversation that we would just need to have closely with legal counsel to consider all of the implications.
Yep.
So I'm not saying no, but I think a lot of municipalities are weary of pursuing this due to the complex legal nature of it. And private entities are able to charge whatever they want for their services. That's why Willow Bend can do what they do with their wastewater treatment plant. The town's a little different.
They charge.
And I just think that because we operate in Barnstable County where the commission exists and we do benefit from their ability to accept impact fees or mitigation dollars, do we want to have this discussion further? And if we do, I'll probably want to loop in the town manager and legal counsel.
I was wondering,
Dennis originally brought this up, so I'll let Dennis jump in here.
I was wondering, could we put that fee on the water department? Because it's the water that goes into the toilets. I think in Boston, that's how they do it. They put it on how much water you use, and they add a little more because they say it's from the flushing into the treatment plant. I mean, is that some way if we do decide to go an impact fee, that it could come to the water department for the use of water instead of having it look like a tax?
I don't know, Dennis. It might be a good question for the district commissioners.
All right.
So, Dennis, are you saying for all new developments that have a different rate than for developments that are existing today?
No, I would say every household. I mean, if the whole the whole town problem, besides the new developments that are going to make it all even worse until we have a sewer system in place. But doesn't Mashpee Commons, I mean, I know they're private, they check for the use of the septic system besides paying the rent of the stores and stuff. I think they charge by how much water you use. I'm not sure, but I think that's the way they do it.
I'm not sure, Dennis.
All right.
I'd like to hear from town council to see if they have any solutions to this. I think that the trigger for going to the Cape Cod Commission as a development of regional impact, the DRI for housing, isn't it still 30 units? I think it's 30 units. So
I don't know what the number is.
And again, it's to capture. We are going to get into a phase. Hey, hindsight's 20/20, right? But we are going to get into a phase of redevelopment here in Mashpee. It might not be for 5 years, it might not be for 10 years, but once we hit that redevelopment, and it might come sooner, like I said, commercial properties might redevelop into residential. It's nice to have that all done, before that phase hits the town.
And I think that goes right to what Evan said earlier. It really would be nice to have that language in place before that happens.
And,
Could I ask a
we
question?
have I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Mary. I'll wait.
I mean, we have active state reps and state senators, and wastewater is something that they'd probably like to have a feather in their cap about that. I know it's not directly related, but now, more and more ponds on the Cape are getting that blue-green algae, right? So, if nobody can swim in a pond on Cape Cod, people will be, ranting and raving about doing something. And that would be one thing. Check. We could say, for new development, we're asking for a fee to go into a town. I'm thinking a town fund that the town could use at its discretion to deal with wastewater. And we don't have to be that stringent upon it. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm going too far.
No, it's worth the discussion, though. Go ahead, Charlie.
Just a question. Mashpee doesn't have a centralized wastewater treatment plant right now for the town, and it depends on multiple individual treatment facilities that are done by the various projects. If those projects and developments are compliant with respect to the discharge permits, groundwater discharge permits, and so forth, how are they impacted by the idea that you would put a fee on it? It would seem to me if it's something where the town has a direct cost, I can see that. But if they're in compliance, how does that work? I'm
Yeah.
totally ignorant about this. I'm just asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question.
A good point, Charlie.
I think we're all on
Don't
the
we
same
have
page.
a water quality bylaw? Do we have a water quality bylaw?
There is, I mean, yes, I'm trying to
So
think.
there's some developments that now you have to have a denitrifying system, right?
Any development that generates greater than 600 gallons of flow per day requires a denite system.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I think I thought
Very expensive, mind you. Very expensive to put in.
But they don't want to make anything too expensive. You know, it's.
No, I don't want to. I'd rather make it cheap as possible. It's just a fee to help us out.
Well, if
I mean,
it's,
Yeah.
Well, Dennis, like you were saying when we were talking back in the Boston days, I mean, the water bills went to thousands of dollars per year.
Oh, I know.
We can't do that to our people. We just can't. I mean,
No,
I
they're-
don't want that to happen.
I know my mother got a bill for $2,200. She was 82 years old, lived by herself.
Yeah, I can't say that.
You know, and we had to fight it to get it down, but that was horrible. You know.
Jack, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, go ahead.
Why, if the board would like to explore this further, why don't I see if the town manager can arrange for a presentation to be made from legal counsel to the board relative to impact fees?
Good idea.
Well, I think that would be prudent. I think if you could just approach him with that, that would be great.
Happy to do it. I'll get that done this week.
Anyone else have anything to add? We're going to move on to the next item. Okay. Discussion regarding the 950 Falmouth Road, Chapter 40B comprehensive permit petition to the Board of Appeals. I know that in the packet, and I know we don't have our hard packets in front of you unless you went to Town Hall and got it. Did everyone have a chance to review that application?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Janet?
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions about it? I mean, I have the advantage because I've been involved with it a lot, so I don't have any questions with it. I understand where they're going and what have you. Does anyone else have anything?
Nope.
Yeah, Jack, just if you had your experience with it on a safety fire side, it looks good to you?
They had to make several modifications to get into compliance. So we had some good discussions. They were able to do it. Go ahead, Mary. You had your hand up.
Oh no, I'll go last. 'Cause I have 4 things.
That was just me. I'm done, so move on.
Jack, you're Charlie on this.
Yes, I will confess that I did get a email from Mary Ann Romero from the ZBA. She forwarded me the application along with the plan set. I know that there's concern with me doing things on behalf of the planning board and submitting things to the ZBA, so I asked her, along with Jonathan Furbush, who's the chairman, whether or not they wanted some sort of a cost estimate, because they have asked me to do inspections on a lot of the projects that they do site plan review for. So they said yes, they wanted a cost estimate. So I did. I put together a cost estimate based on the documentation and my experience working with various applicants and their attorneys for 40B projects. As it turns out, the applicant's attorney here, Peter Freeman, is somebody that I am familiar with, so he's pretty thorough in what he does. So I did put together an estimate and sent that to them. Evan and I had a discussion a little earlier this evening about how you would wish to proceed with it, whether you would prefer to have me work with you, or whether you want me to just continue with what the ZBA asked me to do, or how you want to proceed with it. I don't have a preference one way or the other. I did give them a price, which was, I looked it up, Evan, it was $25.20, not $26.20.
Thanks, Charlie. Do you mind if I just jump in, Jack?
Yeah, no problem.
I spoke with Charlie earlier because I was the applicant in their request to the Board of Appeals sought a waiver on any fees for the engineer or something like that.
I thought it was legal fees, Evan.
Mayor, the staff of the Board of Appeals, I was running amok a little bit about this question. They were out today, but it just had come to my mind, and I don't think this is the best way to proceed after further thought. But I was considering discussing with the board to remove, because the town wants to support this project. This is a project that was, the developer responded to an RFP, and the town wants to see it be successful, and I think the town is motivated to assist in any way possible. So to remove the burden of the applicant to pay for the technical review, I had considered going over with the board, voting to authorize Charlie to do the site plan review and submitting the report that Charlie would offer to the planning board as comment to the Board of Appeals, so that it would come out of Charlie's budget. But now that I know the number that Charlie had quoted them, I do not want to recommend the board do that because it's a significant portion of his budget. So that was the conversation we had. I think it's perfectly okay and well within, and the 2,500 that Charlie quoted, I'm sure is pennies in their overall pro forma. I think it'll be okay. But that's the discussion we had. So I wouldn't recommend going that route. I think if the board's okay with Charlie working directly with the Board of Appeals, either way the work gets done to the benefit of the town.
I'm in agreement with you there. All right, Mary, go ahead.
All right, so, Evan, so are you recommending that the planning board, recommend that the fees are waived?
I don't think the planning board need to take action on that. I think that's
Okay.
I think that's the Board of Appeals. I think the public hearing's not for a month, so we do have a meeting between now and then to I think look more closely at the plans. So outside of Charlie's review, we know Charlie's going to offer the Board of Appeals really good information. But if the board has further comment or comment independent of a technical review relative to the project, we could put that on the next agenda and submit a memo in writing to the chairman of the Board of Appeals prior to the opening of the public hearing, if that's the board's will.
All right, so on their page, I think it's, I'm sorry, hold on, let me cite it right. It's under section D, which is page 28 of our packet, Mashpee zoning bylaw provisions. Number 4, it's regarding zoning bylaw section 17423. The applicant requests a waiver from the requirement that the applicant post a performance bond for erosion and street-of-way damages. And I'm a little uncomfortable with that waiver, just because that road is used by other people and is going to be impacted during construction, and that neighborhood is going to come out. I've already been to several meetings when they were there, questioning what was going on with this property. So I think that we should make them post a bond in case they do damage to that road.
In a unique twist here, I'm in complete agreement with Mary in this regard. I've been down that road. I'd be hesitant to not require a performance bond because with the amount of trucks and things that are going to be required to do those 3 large buildings, there's absolutely potential for that.
Yeah, and the cost of a performance bond is relatively cheap too. It's not a lot of money.
It's relatively small, and it'll give that neighborhood confidence that if that road gets damaged, there is money to repair it, and it's not the town that has to repair it. So that's my first comment. My second comment, and Charlie might not be able to answer it tonight, it was on number 10, and it talks about the applicant requests a waiver from the requirement that the project involving more than 10 parking spaces, that any parking area should have a minimum ratio of 1 to 5 of landscaping or natural area to the paved area. So I kind of wanted to know how much they are missing that 1 to 5 ratio.
Without actually doing a count on the plan or looking it over in detail, Mary, I can't give you a number. When I did look at I do have the plan in front of me, but not the landscaping. There's not a lot of parking that they've actually produced on the property So even though it's more than 10, they do have a landscaping plan that takes into account various places throughout the site. But it's not necessarily all around the parking spaces, and the parking areas seem to face the outward portions of the site, and it's not internal. I could do that. I could do that as part of the evaluation. I just haven't had a number for you right now.
Yeah. But I'd rather not waive that if it's not necessary. The other thing is, Jack, with your meetings with them, have you heard, are they going to have central AC?
That's not under the fire side, so that's not a discussion I had.
We might want to find out, because otherwise there tends to be window AC units. So a lot of off-Cape developers think that it's nice and cool here on the Cape and nobody needs AC. But you do, in a multifamily building, you do need AC. And if they don't put it in, you'll get the window units that will leak and get water on the windows and cause wood rot, and then people are coming back to the town for that repair.
They
so
do have
we want to make
in the building, though. So they do have mechanical rooms in the building. So I think they may have areas for that, but I'm not sure.
I looked at the development they did in Dennis, and they did have central air. I don't know if that matters.
So is that something we can find out either through Evan or?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other thing we want to put as a comment to the Board of Appeals is that any mechanicals, whether they're on the ground or on the roof, are shielded from sight either with some type of architectural component or landscaping or a fence. So a lot of times you get these developers and they give you these plans and they don't have everything on them yet. And you'll work really hard to do this, that, and the other thing, and a stupid, ugly green box ends up in front of the building. You're like, what?
I think the architectural show that they're with a peaked roof. There's no flat roofs involved here.
That's right.
Yeah,
so they're probably all inside, maybe in the attic space or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually seem to recall. I think they hide all of the mechanicals. So I think that's something that POA makes sure they do.
So we had one developer, and he shielded all the mechanicals, but he put all the stinking pipes, all the silver vents out of the roof that you can see on Route 28. It was like, what were you thinking? So, anyway. And then the last comment I think we should consider is, that this development is in compliance with the housing production plan as it increases the town's affordable housing stock by 39 units. Now, 39 units meets the town's annual production goal of 32 units a year. And I'll wait for Dennis to come back on.
While we're waiting, I did go on to the websites for the developments they have in Dennis and in Bourne, and there are sections for amenities, floor plans, photos. There's quite a bit of information out there. They, at least those developments.
You're in, Dennis.
All right, I'm on.
Are pretty good.
That's good. Yeah, they do. This developer is got its game on. As long as you ask them ask them for things, they should say yes. But some of these asks cost money, so you have to push them. But anyways, 39 units, that would meet our annual production goal of 32 affordable units in 1 year, which would give us a safe harbor from unwanted Chapter 40Bs for 12 months. So that might quiet any objections to the number of units. That's our annual production goal is 32. It would certify our housing production plan and give us relief from aggressive Chapter 40Bs for 12 months. So I don't know if you want me to write these up for our next meeting.
I have them written down.
Okay.
Just a question for anybody that would know: is Crossroad a town way or is it a private way?
It's a private way.
Private way. Okay. So it wouldn't necessarily be the town then that would fix the street if something happened, right?
would be.
Would it be a private entity that would have to go in and fix it?
That road going into there is a town road.
Crossroad is?
Well, I don't know if you call it Cross.
As far as
I don't think it's called Cross Road. It's another name.
oh, that's what's there on that plan. That's all.
It's also
But
called
it's a wrong name, but I think the main road going in there is a town road because the lot on the right when you first enter is a town lot.
No, Jack, I don't think so because I've had this conversation with Horsley Witten, who is doing who did the work on the site plans, and it had come up about whether or not they were trying because they found a small wetland, not on the property but on an adjacent parcel, and the required buffer impacted some of their original parking scheme. So they were trying to look where they could move some of those parking spaces on the lot, and they posed the question to me whether or not they could include some on-street parking. And we had debated this, and it was my understanding at the time that it was a private way, and then thus the private way was subject to the rights of abutting property owners and anyone with the rights to traverse the way. So my initial response to them was, you might want to not consider putting parking spaces in the street because I think you would need approval of South Cape Resorts. And their land surveyor, I think, corroborated that assessment.
Okay.
So I believe it's
Thank
a
you.
private way.
Thank you, Evan.
So how does that bond work if it's a private way?
It don't.
Well, I think, normally when we're dealing with private ways, it's by way of a subdivision, and you put a covenant on the property. But I think
It would make them responsible for making the repairs, and at some point in time, somebody would have to make an inspection of the road to see if there was damage, what the damage was, and then file a claim on behalf of. It would be the town actually making the point, I guess, but then involving the insurance company that has secured the bond, and asking them to. Asking the developer to make the necessary repairs to the road and use the bond security for that purpose. So you would have to be something probably your town council would have to get involved in to write the language properly. But it would make the developer responsible for any damage he does on the outside.
So are we going to write a memo, Jack?
Do we want to list these items and pose a letter to them, Evan?
Yeah, why don't I provide a draft memo at our next meeting for the board to scrutinize and make any final comments, and we'll submit after the board approves that that letter or memo after the first meeting in November. If that's
Good idea.
I think that's a good way, and it'll give the board some more time to consume what's proposed.
Great, good discussion. All right, we'll move on to the chairman's report, comprehensive plan update. Obviously, we talked about the last meeting. I think that we need to keep this moving forward. As Evan likes to say, kind of assign deliverables here. Get people having different parts of this so we can move this forward. I think what we really need to do is from all of us, kind of generate some proposals to get good public participation and formalize the process how we're going to move this forward.
Okay.
I know it's tough, Mary. There's a lot to it.
I'm writing down my to-do.
Yeah, Jack, what I had said to Jack when he had asked me about the comprehensive plan, and I think I had responded to an email about what I liked about Yarmouth, what Yarmouth's doing with their visioning work, and a couple simple things. They branded their initiative. They called it something. I think that's something the board should give thought to. What are we going to call this process?
Do I dare ask?
Do you have any ideas, Evan? Evan, what's your idea?
I like master plan. But they brand
the Mashpee spleen.
They branded their initiative. That's one thing. so it just, that's one small deliverable we can do together. Let's give us a name so we can, kind of proceed with that. But they've also given thought to, a schedule of public participation over a series of years, and then after those, they gave consideration to how they're gonna implement their survey. So I asked the chair if he would be comfortable asking the board to do those two things for the next meeting. What do we want to call this initiative as we look towards the future and the comprehensive plan update? And can we begin working on a schedule of engagement over the next year?
Right.
I think that's where we can start.
Put your
And
thinking
then
caps on, everybody.
From a staff side, I'm going to produce a webpage so that all the information can go to one place. And that's where we'll start, if that's okay with the board.
I think it's a good starting.
Yeah.
I do too.
I have an idea. Let's just put a new cover on it. Put it on the shop and call it a day.
Come
I
on,
don't think
Dennis.
we ever used that much since it's been
No,
done. So.
I will say, I
Dennis,
agree.
I like where you're coming from.
There's lots of areas in there that don't need to be touched, Dennis.
Right.
I absolutely
Yeah.
think some areas, and I think if we identify those areas, and then once we identify those areas, we really want to key in it, whether it be 2, 3, 4 things, and then engage the public to
Right.
in those areas and come up with a plan after we've branded this, so to speak, and we move forward with it. I think, and like Evan says, I saw Mary's face when Evan talked about years, and I don't want to go years. I'd love to have a little shorter timetable, but it does take some things. But I think if we reduce this down to the areas we actually think that really need to be updated, we focus on those, we get engagement from the public, however we decide we want to do it. And I don't think just mean by sending out a survey, but I mean I actually think having meetings, your town hall type things where we go to the different associations and involve them. I know Evan's over there biting his tongue right now, waiting to jump in on this, but I think we've got a way to move that forward. So go ahead, Evan.
This is the one thing I wanted to stress, and I think there was one piece of this that didn't. I don't think before March and before COVID we were really jumped on. We did a little bit by way of tweaking the survey, but this should start with an exercise in vision. There should be a visioning exercise to start. Because maybe after a year of effective engagement with the Mashpee community, the vision is we like it the way it is, and then we define the plan appropriately. But ultimately, the last time this visioning exercise was done, Dennis, was in 1992.
Right.
I was 3.
Right. It's time to update it.
I mean, time. It's just. I think the people who currently live in Mashpee deserve the opportunity to say whether or not they want things to be one way or the other, and that's I think where our focus should be. So I think an exercise in visioning is crucial to start this off.
Got it.
Dennis, weren't you already retired in 92?
Yeah. Oh, 2001. Yeah, I was 41 years old then. That would make me feel old.
Sorry, Dennis.
Yeah. So that's the gist of it. So I think everyone put, like as Joe said, put your thinking caps on and let's brand this for our next meeting. I'll get some upside ideas and some ideas on how we can engage the public with this.
And I think I'm going to do my best to make sure I'm coming back every couple of weeks with something for you to react to. Just so I can feel confident that I'm giving you the best possible work from the department, and it'll keep the timeline progressing. Whether or not you accept my proposals or not is one thing, but I just want to make sure we keep moving down the line.
Absolutely.
Got it. Good.
We're all in agreement with that.
Yes.
All right, next item on the agenda is the town meeting summary. For those who were there, it was entertaining listening to Mr. Fadala, but otherwise, that we had the agenda generated very little discussion. There was some discussion with regards to the third one on its impact on single-family homes, which we quickly clarified, or Evan quickly stood up and clarified. So all 3 got passed unanimously, so I don't think we had any issues.
That's
great.
I do want to say that, the most current version of the bylaw is not on the website.
Yeah, I can enlighten to the board as to why that's the case.
Already talked about it.
But I'll let you know.
Well,
think-
the one from 2019 is on there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not up to date?
Well, so what occurred was after our last town, I guess, last time zoning articles were voted on at town meeting, the clerk's office had a new staff member who was responsible for making the appropriate edits in the text, and there were significant issues with how that work was done. So they needed time to address those errors. And in that time, we've had COVID-19 and pretty major elections, so the clerk hasn't been able to address those yet. So I'm hopeful that'll happen soon, but that's why they're not up.
Is there any way that you could, like when you go to the ZBA webpage, right? You have the 2019 bylaw. Is there any way you could link the articles that were approved since then and have that link there?
I can do that.
That
Evan-
way,
Go ahead, Mary, sorry.
yeah, a lot of places that's what they would do. Now it's so easy to print out, 300-page documents. But back in the day, they would take the bylaw and just insert what amendments had been done, and they reprinted the thing every couple of years. So if you could just put what's been amended since that time, since that date in 2019, and then get that up there, then we're covered. We're covered.
I can do that. Just so what has changed since the removal of the bylaw was the accessory apartment bylaw and the subsequent solar amendments that were made now 2 town meetings ago. So we can do that, Mary. That's easy enough.
Do you have the editing capabilities of your page, like I do for the fire department page?
Yes.
Do you have the ability to edit?
I can edit it all, the boards and the departments.
You could just put a link right there to those rather than relying on the clerk's office to post a final copy. So at least you get, like as Mary suggested, getting those changes in there.
Sure, we can create like an archive of warrant articles.
Yeah, right.
Okay, on planner report, Evan, housing production plan.
I wanted to put this on to report to you because I've had now numerous discussions with the chairman of the Affordable Housing Committee, Alan Isbitz, about the housing production plan, which was approved in 2015, and the town is required to update this every 5 years. We are coming right up on our 5-year deadline, and the town's in a tricky position right now on this particular update because it's due. It's 2020. We have no updated census figures, and most of the data in our report is based on 2010 census information. So we're not able to do a major overhaul. We've had some discussions with DHCD about this and what their expectation is, and they couldn't really waive this requirement because it's vested in the 40B regs to do this. So I've been working with Alan on a really light update. Essentially updating what we can with the information we have so we can meet our statutory requirement to update it. And the reason I tell you this is because the board needs to vote and approve the update, and so will the selectmen. We don't think we'll hit November, or I think our likely timeline is to have a final draft ready for update by January. So I'd like to just put that on your radar. Our intention, I think, the Affordable Housing Committee's intention, and I think where they become more involved with our comprehensive plan updating process is after the release of the 2020 census data, where we can do a more significant overhaul. So we probably will update shortly thereafter. So we'll do an update not after 5 years, but probably after 1 or 2, depending on when that information is released. So I'm telling you this just so you know where we're going and what to expect come January. And that's where that sits. If there are any questions, I can field questions. Otherwise, I'll move on. Good? The next, I did participate in that Climate Initiative Sub-Regional Municipal Working Group, Mary. It was good. It was very long. There wasn't great participation by other towns. It was Sandwich, Mashpee, Bourne, and Falmouth. Each town essentially had one representative. Most of them were, selectmen. There was some staff, but essentially what they were seeking from me was the town's priorities with regard to climate change impacts, which are well defined because we just finished our MVP planning process, and that was easy enough. And they were trying to solicit some information about what the towns would benefit from by way of this Cape Cod Climate Change Initiative. So I provided the best feedback I could from what I heard from the MVP process and some of my own professional opinions. I think there'll be a video of this conversation up on YouTube at some point. I would say it's, you're not going to eat popcorn and kick back in your lounge chair to watch it, but if you want to see the specifics of what I discussed, it should be up on the Commission's YouTube. I think other municipalities had gone through the same workshops throughout that week. And following the municipal conversations, they'll go to a wider public participatory process. And that's it from the planner. Jack, you on mute?
Oh.
There you are.
I was.
There you go.
So board member committee reports, Cape Cod Commission, Mary.
No report.
Community Preservation Committee.
No meeting, but that gooseberry article will probably be on the next town meeting, and hopefully we'll have a community preservation committee meeting before that, so we can keep everything in line and in order. And I also asked the chair of the CPC to schedule the annual public hearing for public comment on what the CPC should recommend for funding, because I'm hearing that the people that I talk to about this kind of stuff, they're like, how come the CPC doesn't spend more money on open space? And my response was, well, you have to come to the annual public meeting and tell us that you want us to spend the most money on open space. So stay tuned, because I'm going to really push that we have a public hearing that's well advertised, because I got some rumblings that people weren't happy with the way CPA money was being spent, and yet the committee itself hasn't heard that directly from the citizens. So that's my report.
With regards to that, is the town committed to getting a good assessment of Gooseberry Island? Because I know that was one of the challenges. You can't put that in an article without a financial component. So.
Right. Yep. That's all getting kind of processed. Like, you can make the article and put a blank in there because you're in the process of negotiating that amount, because your warrant has to be published so far in advance. But by town meeting, you have to have that number settled. So.
Right, and that was the challenge here, because they didn't have that number settled. So,
yeah.
Mr. Haney had a number on a flyer he passed out, but that's a different story.
5.5. Design review.
Yeah, not bad. No meeting.
Plan review.
No meeting.
Environmental oversight.
There was no meeting.
Greenways quashed it.
No meeting.
Historic district.
I'm waiting for Evans to give me the meeting date.
I'll give you an update, Dennis. I haven't reached out to the commissioners because I haven't received the application yet.
Okay, I'm waiting.
But it'll be a busy meeting, because since my last update to you, expecting an application, I'm expecting 2 more.
Oh, good. Be busy.
It'll be a busy one. You get ready.
The Advisory Council, we had quite a busy meeting. We had a Zoom meeting that only, unfortunately, because of the platform they were using, only allowed 100 participants. So there was a lot of discourse in the side chat during the meeting with regards to public comment. It was quite an interesting meeting, a very long meeting, and they're planning on having another one. But the next meeting, we're scheduled to have one next week, but it got postponed because they want to get a better platform so they can include a lot more than 100 participants. That was a cost kind of thing. They were using someone else's server. So hopefully we get that worked out and we can involve more people. And what I'm talking about is there was a lot of discussion regarding the range that they're proposing over there. So there's more to come on that. So hopefully the next meeting we'll have more public input and we'll move forward. As far as correspondence, everyone's seen the correspondence that was associated with the packet. Does anyone have any questions regarding that?
No.
Does anyone have anything good for the committee?
Yeah, I'll give you an inspection report, Jack, if you like it.
Oh, yeah, Charlie, where are you? There you are. Hey, Charlie.
I'm sitting right here, watching everybody.
You know,
There's been a lot of activity, as you may know, off of Rock Landing Road and Cottages Number 4 down at New Seabury. They've completely stripped the site and are working on putting in gravity sewers and the force main. And I've been down there a number of times this month in order to keep up with their inspection schedule. During the course of one inspection, it was asked of me why we had such a deep hole on the south end of the project for stormwater drainage, and it was an open drainage area that they had designed into it, you may recall. Now they want to change that and make it subsurface infiltration like they've done in the other phases of the cottages. I told them that that was a change that was not a simple field change, that they needed to put together some information on what they want to do and to, at some point, present it to you folks for your approval of it. In terms of the impact on the development, in my view, it's minimal. How you want to handle it, because it was a subdivision, is up to you. Technically speaking, you probably need to modify the subdivision, but I certainly wouldn't want to put them through it or put you folks through it just to do that. So maybe you can find a way to do that. Inspections are going well. Everybody seems to be on the page as what they are supposed to do. Pastore is the contractor. I think he's doing a good job. And one other item with respect to Cottages 3, Dennis, maybe you've looked at it. I did check out that catch basin that's out on Great Oak Road, which we had the issues with. And I noticed that they did at least pull out the grate. The grass is all gone, and I think they cleaned that basin. They've improved the erosion control on Great Oak Road, and they've also done a little bit of erosion control up on their entrance road to keep the sand from coming down onto the road. So so I don't think that's an issue anymore, but I'll keep her appraised on what they do with inspections from now on. I'm sure it'll carry over beyond the first of the year, so we'll have to deal with that as it comes.
I got a question, Charlie. If it's all
right, go ahead. Yeah.
The new development now, Phase 5, when they first came to us with those three models, near the real estate office, I thought we said they couldn't have no entrance off of Red Brick Road there, where they have the entrance to go in. You know, it may be temporary with the construction.
They're going to modify that, I believe. I'd have to go back and research the final plan to be sure.
I was trying to look for, I couldn't find it, but I couldn't remember. We said they couldn't have an entrance to that area, but
I remember the discussion you had. I'll look at it again to be sure, because they were going to redivide the properties right on the very end of that, and there is a cul-de-sac there internally. So I'll take a look at it again to see how that ultimately ended up. That's not changed to the best of my recollection.
Okay.
From whatever you approved.
I will say, Dennis, I did talk to them. I happened to go over there and tour that site before they land cleared all that. And they are going to keep that driveway because they're going to maintain that office down on the right-hand side, so they still need access to the office. They are going to keep that cul-de-sac associated with those units, but that office still needs access, so they were going to maintain that driveway. So I think that's
okay.
But I don't think I have, confirmation on that. I have two questions for Charlie, though. When you're talking about the drop-off area that they want to reconfigure that, are you talking about that area where it's really pronounced where the land drops off on that south side of the range, or somewhere else?
No, this is internal to the development on the inside of the circle of the roadways that they have. There was a big depression that they were going to leave open as a retention area for stormwater runoff. But in the other phases, they've done that subsurface. And as a matter of fact, underneath the cul-de-sac, which is up in the other end that you were just alluding to, that is subsurface. So they simply want to do the same thing on the south side. Soil conditions are still great. They can do that, and it'll level off the area a little bit, so there will be some level areas rather than some deep contours behind the units that they'll be building in that south end.
All right.
So I don't see any significant changes, and the stormwater situation would not change at all in terms of the capacity. They've designed it to handle up to the 100-year storm, and they still have the overflow that would end up on the open space next to the golf course area. So that's not a change.
And the only other thing, and I think maybe Dennis or Mary can offer some input into this, or maybe you, Charlie, with that site, with all that land clear and those big mounds of dirt, I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but when the wind blows and we haven't had rain, Rock Landing Road is just completely obliterated by the sand and the dust. And is there any requirement, maybe you guys can allude that to me, a requirement that they keep that area moist or somehow trap that down, those mounds of dirt, so we don't get that, especially on the weekends when they're not doing work?
It's like a dust bowl, yeah.
The only way you could do it, I think, would be to spray it. They'd have to have a water truck there or something that could elevate the stream or something to get to the top of those piles. I hear what you're saying. That's certainly something on my next inspection, which will be, it's going to be tomorrow, I guess, because they've got some other work that they wanted me to look at. I could ask them about that.
Yeah,
if you want me to.
Does anyone else have any concerns about that?
It blows in my face when I drive by it every day. My window's open.
Yeah, the last few days it's been wet enough so it's not blowing around, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, last week it was bad.
Yeah, there is one thing that I did not address with them today, which I will tomorrow, and that's right at Rock Landing Road. They have put their temporary stone down to keep mud and so forth off the road, but for some reason they left a little grass strip there, and it's all turned muddy in the last 3 or 4 days. So I'm going to have them pull that out and put some stone in there also to protect the edge of the pavement.
Great. All right, does anyone else have anything? Jen, do you have anything? Are you good, Jen?
Jen fell asleep.
Which I did so.
She's like, I got to hit the unmute button.
Sorry, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you, Jen.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Dennis made a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second that motion, Joe.
Joe Callahan made the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night.
See you next time.
Everyone.
Thank you, Jen.
Great.
Thank you. Good night.